Good afternoon. I first want to thank Commissioner Garcia for joining me today and his council, your council, Commissioner, from your law enforcement expertise. So many decades of work, your work as sheriff is incredibly valuable as we navigate all of these crises and hopefully set our next budget. Tomorrow, Commissioners Court will be considering a proposed budget that continues our commitment to public health and to public safety. Violent, gun-related crime in Harris County and across the United States, particularly metropolitan areas, is spiking. And we all have a responsibility to lean in and do what we can to tackle it, and that's what we are continuing to do. Just this morning, HPD officers were shot at by someone they were arresting. Thankfully, they're doing okay. But what happened is not okay. As Sheriff Gonzalez said just last week, though, we cannot incarcerate our way out of this problem. Decades of failed criminal justice policies have wasted billions of dollars focused on so-called silver bullet solutions that sound good, like mass incarceration, like indiscriminate policing, while failing to address the root causes of crime and the root causes of the issues to truly address them. In particular, while failing to address the widespread availability of weapons of war in this community and around our state. Those days, we hope, are over. We now have an opportunity to build a better criminal justice system that is smart enough to address the root causes of crime, that is smart enough to differentiate between violent repeat offenders who should be locked up and non-violent low-level offenders who can be diverted and can be reintegrated. That's what we need to do. To work on law enforcement and policing in ways that engage the community, partner with the community instead of targeting the community. The new budgets that Commissioners Court will consider and that we are here to propose does all of this and more. And just as importantly, it continues historic investments we have made on fighting crime and supporting our law enforcement agencies. Even better, it does all of that within our existing tax rate. Let me just provide a few highlights. First, the proposed budget for fiscal year 23 includes $1.4 billion. $1.4 billion with a B dollars for justice and safety programs, 400 vehicles for the sheriff's office and constables, salary increases and overtime for the DA's office, $250,000 for constables' pay increases, 60 additional detention officers at the jail and additional sheriff's patrol deputies, 10 additional bailiffs for our courts, almost $1 million for constable patrol contracts, 35 more positions in the Criminal Investigations Bureau of the Sheriff's Office. In fact, 70% of the proposed new investments in this budget are stated for justice and safety initiatives, like the ones we've been highlighting over the past few months. Our Clean Streets, Safe Neighborhoods program works to tear down buildings that are harboring criminal behavior, to address lighting challenges and make sure that communities are safe. Our work to reduce our unacceptable court backlogs, our violence interruption programs, our mental health programs, our overtime programs, our plan to support our police with alternative responders who can take routine mental health calls that are not violent. And yes, it also includes continued increases for jail health and safety, increased salaries for prosecutors to help with retention, and more police who can focus on violent crime. The alternative being proposed by two of our colleagues cannot be considered a serious proposal. The draconian cuts they're proposing are dystopian. Picture a public health department cut 50% in the middle of a pandemic. Imagine a quarter of our libraries shuttered, a quarter of their funds cut. draconian cuts to our elections department right as an election is about to take place, to the order of around $11 million. 1,140 county employees having to pack up their belongings and walk out the door because they would be fired under these proposals. We will get through this violent spike in crime that is impacting the whole nation. But to do it, we have to put ugly and cruel politics aside. We need to work together and do the work that it takes. And that means focusing on real solutions, focusing on facts, focusing on civil discourse, focusing on the issues at hand. That's what we'll continue to do in order to move forward in the best way. I repeat my remarks in Spanish before passing it on to Commissioner Garcia. Primero le quiero agradecer al comisionado cuya experiencia ha sido invaluable durante todo este proceso, en lo que definimos cuál es un presupuesto adecuado, tantos años de trabajo como policía, como alguacil, experto en estos temas, ha sido realmente clave. Mañana la Corte de Comisionados va a considerar un presupuesto, un proyecto de presupuesto en el cual hemos trabajado y el cual refleja nuestro compromiso a la salud y a la seguridad pública. El crimen armado en los Estados Unidos y en el condado Harris ha subido dramáticamente. Está sucediendo básicamente en todas las áreas, las ciudades principales de nuestro país. Y todos tenemos una responsabilidad de atacar esto. Como dijo el alguacil González, justo esta semana que acaba de pasar, no podemos solo arrestar o encarcelar para salir de este problema. Es un reto mucho más complejo. Han habido décadas de políticas públicas en contra el crimen que han gastado miles de millones de dólares, llevando solo al encarcelamiento masivo, a vigilancia policial indiscriminada y no realmente a soluciones. Todavía tenemos las raíces de esos problemas y son esas raíces que hay que atacar para ya lidiar con estos retos de una vez por todas. Ahora tenemos la oportunidad de construir un sistema judicial y un sistema de justicia que es inteligente, que se enfoca en las causas fundamentales del crimen. Un sistema que es lo suficientemente inteligente para diferenciar entre delincuentes violentos, reincidentes que pertenecen en la cárcel y personas que cometen un crimen no violento, muy mínimo, que pueden ser reintegrados o trabajar en un programa de rehabilitación. El nuevo presupuesto que estamos presentando hace todo esto y aún más. Continúa las inversiones históricas que hemos puesto hacia la salud pública y la policía y también hace todo esto basado en la tasa de impuestos existente. Unos ejemplos. Nuestro presupuesto incluye casi 1.4 billones con B, o sea, más de 1,000 millones de dólares para los programas de justicia y seguridad, 400 vehículos para la oficina del alguacil y los agentes, incrementos, aumentos salariales y horas extras para los fiscales y asistentes de los fiscales, $250,000 para un incremento en salarios también a la oficina del constable, 60 oficiales de detención de la cárcel y agentes adicionales para ir a la patrulla por parte del alguacil, 10 agentes más para nuestras cortes, casi $1 millón para contratos de patrullaje de los constables, 35 posiciones más para la oficina de investigaciones criminales del alguacil y aún más. De hecho, 70% de las inversiones que proponemos, nuevas inversiones en este presupuesto, van hacia el área de justicia y seguridad. Iniciativas como las cuales que hemos presentado en estos últimos meses, la iniciativa para destruir edificios abandonados donde hay elementos criminales, para trabajar en la interrupción de violencia armada entre pandillas, por ejemplo. Lo que hemos trabajado también en cuanto a salud mental, en cuanto a ofrecer fondos adicionales para horas extras para nuestros policías que estén en las áreas más peligrosas patrullando y muchísimas más iniciativas durante estos últimos años. También incluye incrementos para la salud en la cárcel, la seguridad en la cárcel, salarios adicionales, aumentos para los salarios de los fiscales y más policía que pueden enfocarse en el crimen violento. Hay una alternativa presentada por dos de nuestros colegas, es realmente distópica, lo que están presentando no puede ser considerado realista. Imagínense cortar el presupuesto del Departamento de Salud Pública por 50%, es de hecho partirlo en la mitad, en medio de una pandemia. Reducir el presupuesto de nuestras bibliotecas un 25%, reducirlo por un cuarto. Cortar el presupuesto para nuestras elecciones, viene una elección ahorita el 1 de marzo, cortar el presupuesto para las elecciones por 11 millones de dólares. Y además despediría 1.140 empleados del condado, imagínense, 1.140 personas, 1.140 familias empacando cajas y yéndose sin trabajo. No es realista. Vamos a sobrevivir este incremento en el crimen violento, en la violencia armada que enfrenta el condado, que enfrenta la nación, pero lo tenemos que hacer juntos, de una manera honesta, de una manera abierta. No se trata de ataques políticos, de ataques personales. Esto lo hay que hacerlo basado en hechos y basado en discurso civil. Y por eso estamos proponiendo este presupuesto muy basado en los hechos, en la realidad, y esperamos que nuestros colegas lo apoyen. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to just accentuate the point that every decision we make here in Harris County, the judge and I have worked diligently to make sure that every decision that we make has everything to do with putting public safety and the people's safety of Harris County first and foremost. Right now, we're getting ready to finalize the budget. And despite significant financial challenges and with minimal money to spare, we are on the cusp of making historical decisions and investments that will have a huge and positive impact on Harris County for years to come. When the district attorney presented her budget, she identified that her number one issue was trouble in recruiting and retaining some of her staff because of the pay scale that Harris County has had. Having a strong district attorney's office staffed by the best prosecutors and assistant district attorneys is critical to defeating the backlog and keeping people safe. So, we are announcing that with this budget, we are setting a new standard in Harris County with an $87,000-year starting salary for entry-level district attorneys and raising the salaries for those in the front lines and in the trenches of fighting crime. That's just under $10,000 more than what any other county in Texas is paying the same staff level, the same level of staff. By comparison, neighboring county, Montgomery County, starts its folks somewhere around $78,000. By granting the district attorney's request for significant pay increases, the highest starting pay in the state of Texas, we are making two fundamental declarations. One, that we prioritize doing everything in our power to attack the stubborn backlog. Secondly, Harris County will be the best place for a young prosecutor to start their careers. Not only are we addressing District Attorney Zogg's concerns, this move will also serve to improve her ability to recruit the best and brightest, most hardworking folks in Texas. This starting salary is higher than what chief prosecutors in other jurisdictions are currently making in this state. So I just want to say that public safety is on the front mind of the county judge and I, and some of my other colleagues. The discussions or the points that the county judge has made in terms of proposals being brought forth would actually make Harris County less safe. This is one of the items that we have worked tirelessly to make sure that we are thinking through the most significant issues on what it takes to support our men and women on the front lines and do everything we can for the victims of crime to ensure that they are properly represented and that they will have their day in court along with those who have been accused. Now, a few remarks in Spanish. Hoy estamos anunciando que todas las decisiones que nosotros estamos llevando a cabo son decisiones que primeramente toma la seguridad pública en mente. Estamos haciendo decisiones críticas que van a tener un impacto positivo y histórico aquí en el condado de Harris por años para adelante. Y también estamos reconociendo que es importante de apoyar a aquellos que están haciendo el trabajo más difícil en la batalla en contra de la delincuencia y el crimen. Y por eso estamos anunciando hoy que vamos a reconocer una de las preocupaciones, frustraciones de la procuradora Kim Oak, que es importante, hoy ella está batallando en mantener y reclutar nuevos elementos en su oficina. Entonces hoy estamos anunciando que vamos a ofrecer $87,000 para un nuevo procurador en la oficina de ella. Esto es el salario más alto en todo Texas en cualquier jurisdicción. Sin embargo, estamos ofreciendo casi $10,000 más que cualquier otro condado está pagando y tenemos jefes de las diferentes oficinas igual que no están recibiendo al tal lo que estamos proponiendo. Esto es lo que es importante, de tener los elementos trabajando, los elementos que están trabajando duros también para ser pagados lo que es justo para el trabajo que le estamos poniendo enfrente. Esto es la estrategia, yo creo, más eficiente para poder atacar los casos que tenemos en el sistema. Y también quiero reconocer que todas las decisiones que estamos haciendo, la jueza y yo, y a lo menos otro colega, siempre estamos también tomando en cuenta cómo es el modo más eficiente, más estratégico para poder atacar y aumentar la seguridad pública y para asegurar que las víctimas de crimen están teniendo su día en la corte. Ese es el trabajo duro, es el trabajo difícil, pero es el trabajo en que la jueza, yo, y a lo menos puedo hablar por el comisionado Ellis, estamos enfocados para hacer. Otras decisiones que otros colegas están ofreciendo realmente van a poner nuestro condado en más riesgo. Gracias. Thank you,
We'll
Judge.
take any questions.
Judge, in terms of this proposed budget here, is there any, will there be funding for any additional prosecutors, or is this only salary increases? And how would salary increases for them fight or reduce violent crime?
I'll let the commissioner take this question.
Sure. First of all, this is going to first and foremost help the district attorney fill the gap that she has in her office. Somewhere in over 60 positions is what we're calculating is what she currently has vacant, with the great majority of that being prosecutors. The district attorney herself has identified that recruiting and retaining are amongst the top of her challenges. So with this will allow us to help her stabilize her office, and then with future budget recommendations, the potential of adding staff. But right now we've got to stabilize the organizations, and this is the best and most effective way to do that.
Same question that I got, the additional vehicles, will there be, you had mentioned some, I think, additional staff. So for those additional vehicles that are in the proposed budget, will there be additional law enforcement officers to staff them and put out on the street?
Those are decisions that we're going to be talking about tomorrow, and so we'll see where that discussion goes.
Yeah, but there is funding for additional staff. You guys can get the details. Over the past few years, we have increased the number of prosecutors, but as Commissioner mentioned,
Yeah.
well, I'll leave it there. Yeah.
How do we keep, you could hire the big and bright attorneys, but how do we keep those criminals inside? They, they bond out and they come out.
The biggest challenge right now is the gun violence in our community. Obviously, having these folks who recidivate because they can pay their bond many times. Sometimes it's a low bond. Many times, like the criminal that murdered Corporal Galloway had a $1 million bond in 3 different counties and was able to pay it. That is a problem. But the biggest contributor to the increase in crime, we were just having this conversation earlier today, is the gun violence. A lot of crimes have gone down, but particularly is the homicide, the assault with a deadly weapon. That is what's up. And so what we need to target is gun violence, gang violence, retaliation. And so that's why we're focusing on also this historic investment, $1.4 billion, and these initiatives that have been shown to work, like targeting our additional and overtime police into the specific areas. This gun violence is concentrated in certain areas, so we're targeting those. We're addressing mental health issues. We are addressing that tit for tat through our gun violence interruption program, and having adequate pay as well will help retain the best staff, which is also why we're increasing salaries for one of the constables' offices.
You also talked about you mentioned that the court backlog is one of the issues the county's been dealing with. And I know that today the Jury Assembly building reopened, first time it's been used since it was flooded during Harvey. How big of a boost is having that facility now open, being able to pick juries here? I know it's not at full capacity, but how much of a boost is that going to give you all in tackling that court backlog?
That helps. It helps just from a convenience standpoint, which is important, because when you have so much staff that needs to be present for a trial to take place, for a jury to be selected, for them to be able to be downtown as opposed to have to go to NRG, that helps. There are many, many different pieces of the puzzle, right? So one piece of the puzzle is the intake portion. When somebody's first presented, is this a case that truly needs to be taken? And there we are funding a triage program and an intake program to make sure those decisions are really smart. Then there's the evidence piece. We learned that a lot of evidence takes a very long time to be available, and trials cannot take place until that evidence is available. The body cam data is in a format that can be reviewed and can be produced. Commissioner Garcia led this initiative, so we're working to make sure that actually we have an item on this court tomorrow, finally updating the body cam system, and we've updated the voice phone call evidence system. Then there is additional judges. And so that's where we have hired visiting judges, associate judges, and additional prosecutors, as well as staff to staff our courts. We need 120% clearance rate in both misdemeanor courts and felony courts so that we can get through this backlog in the next 2 years. We're not there yet. It takes everybody working in tandem. So Commissioner Garcia, we're going to continue making sure that everything that we recognize as a kink in the system, that we address it. But of course, every player in the system needs to be as efficient, as committed, as focused on data as they can be. But we're not going to let off. It'll make a difference, but I'm not going to pretend like because jury assembly room is open, all of a sudden we're going to get to that 120%. That's not going to be the case overnight. No.
Comisionado García, una pregunta en español. El programa de ShotSpotter está dentro de este presupuesto. Ya casi llevamos un año con este programa piloto. ¿Se piensa instalar en otras regiones del condado para tratar de reducir la violencia con armas de fuego?
El proyecto ShotSpotter no está en este presupuesto porque yo lo estoy pagando dentro de mi presupuesto. Pero todavía está bajo un proyecto piloto. Estamos trabajando con el alguacil. Yo quiero que el alguacil me siga dando la confianza en el sistema. Entonces, en otra temporada vamos a posiblemente ofrecerlo para poder apoyar a nuestros elementos. Pero ahorita yo quiero asegurar que es un proyecto exitoso, que está teniendo los resultados que yo esperaba, y al momento estamos teniendo sumamente éxito con este proyecto. Entonces, ya que la temporada de ser un proyecto piloto se llega a terminar, vamos a decidir a expandirlo en otras áreas para poder tener más cobertura.
Have a question that came in for Judge Lina Hidalgo. This is from Fox 26. For my glasses. It says, how are you responding to criticism from those who say that you were forced your way into the ceremonial vanguard of Constable Galloway's funeral without invitation from Precinct 5 organizers and the family?
We answered that question last week for Fox already. So we're good. Any other questions?
I have a question.
All right. Thank you all very much.
He's got a
question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I guess just to put it more bluntly, for people out in the community, I mean, what is your overarching message as to how you believe this budget might solve the issue of violent crime? Can you summarize for me, if you had to basically sell it to the other commissioners or to the community tomorrow, what are you going to tell them about how you think this might do?
This is an all-of-the-above approach. This is an all-of-the-above approach. We are increasing salaries. We are bringing additional law enforcement. We are fighting blight and destroying buildings where bad elements congregate. Mental health program, gun violence interruption, additional judges, additional courts, additional court staff, faster evidence processing. We cannot pretend that there is a silver bullet solution to all of this. And if you hear anybody pretending that, then please don't get taken for a ride. It is not an easy challenge, but it is a challenge we are taking on. And with this all-of-the-above approach, we will begin to see results, but it's a tough challenge. It's attacking the entire nation. This is not just Harris County. So that's the other thing, folks that say, well, it's because in Harris County, this and that. If it were just Harris County, why would it be happening all around the nation? So the point is, we have an opportunity to be tough and smart. And that's what we're being, tough and smart and honest and realistic. And we're going to keep fighting. It is as much as the budget will sustain for law enforcement, and it is an all-of-the-above approach.
Anything else?
I want to add a point to this. I want to give you 2 years to use as a point of reference, 1980 and 2009. 1980 was one of the first oil busts that this community experienced. The city of Houston stopped hiring law enforcement. In 2009, we had the housing market collapse. Harris County laid off hundreds of deputy constables. This budget is demonstrating our continued investment in public safety. No one's being laid off. We're maintaining services because government needs to continue to work to strengthen our economy, and we continue to make an investment in public safety to do everything possible to keep our community safe. Thank you.
The procedural question is, tomorrow, are you expecting a vote, or is this just the budget is laid out tomorrow? What happens tomorrow?
Tomorrow's a vote. So remember the fiscal year, normally we set the budget, this is what we inherited, is for the budget to be set in February, but the tax rate is not adopted until September. So you're basically guessing between March and September. So what we're doing now with our county administrator's office and just good financial planning is trying to line those up. And so tomorrow we are voting on a short fiscal year 2022 budget that's going to take us from March to September. And then we are voting on a planning budget, we're calling a planning budget for 2023, so that we don't have to go over the entire budget season, which takes 6 months, again in September. So we're going to vote to officially adopt the 2023 budget in September, but the expectation, we're voting on it now, so there can't really be any changes in September unless somebody figures out what to cut instead.
Pues, ¿podría repetir brevemente esa parte en español? La importancia de mañana la reunión. ¿Se va a votar mañana en ese presupuesto? ¿O qué puede ser lo que se espera mañana?
Sí, se va a votar mañana en el presupuesto y es por esta razón. Lo que heredamos nosotros cuando llegamos aquí a liderar el condado es un año fiscal que empezaba en marzo. Entonces, adoptábamos el presupuesto en febrero, pero no elegíamos la tasa de impuestos sino hasta septiembre. Entonces, entre febrero, marzo y septiembre estamos adivinando básicamente. Lo que estamos trabajando ahora para ser pues más responsables con los fondos públicos es alinear esas fechas. Entonces, ahorita estamos adoptando un presupuesto, mañana se va a adoptar el presupuesto del año corto 2022, va a ser un presupuesto de marzo a septiembre. Y después, también mañana, vamos a votar en un presupuesto planificado, el plan del presupuesto para el 2023. Con eso, llegando a septiembre, no tenemos que volver a hacer todo este proceso de presupuesto que tarda 6 meses. El presupuesto del 2023 se adopta formalmente en septiembre, pero lo que todos hemos discutido en público en la mesa es no van a haber cambios basados en lo que se apruebe mañana, a menos de que alguien proponga que cortar. O sea, lo que se adopta mañana es lo que planeamos decidir en septiembre para el año 2023.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right.